And boom, and we're live. Well, good evening and welcome to another edition of Life is People. And well, tonight is the return of the great Nick Lambert to this podcast, and it's I now judge I've got into the thinking. I was saying this the other day to someone the other day, Nick, that I'm now my whole thought process. You know, like we have in school, we used to have in school that there was B, C, and AD. Well, my term calendar now goes in AR and BR, which is, before Rust and after Rust. And the last time we had a conversation, it was before Rust, before Rust time. So anyway, Nick, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, it's just like I say, it's been a long and windy road since the last time we spoke on this podcast, and well, a lot's happened really, and like I say, really, because one of the major developments really that's happened in the preceding year has been really the sort of change from C++ to Rust. And I know it's a story that's been sort of been told a lot, but just sort of give us a sort of perspective from your side, not what it was like that weekend that David sort of came in and decided I've got a new plan. I mean, how did that sort of go down from your perspective?
Yeah, it was. We used to go for lunch at this kind of little pub across the road, and just before people think we're drunken Scotsmen, we always had soft drinks, but and it kind of was almost an overnight thing. He mentioned that he was ongoing his investigation, so it was a kind of gradual move into it. But I think we knew it was coming because as David got more and more excited by it and started, I can't remember the first library. It might have been the self-encryption library that he cut across, and we got a feeling that more and more, the more excited he got, the kind of more inevitable it felt. So that when the actual decision came, I don't think we were that surprised, and I don't think I think it's been nothing but the right decision. So yeah, it's been I suppose it's been a kind of year of almost kind of like rebuilding is a way to describe it. But it's the move to Rust has been really good, and the core developers, that whole community is really accessible and made themselves really open to us, so that's really helpful as well. So it's been a really good change, but probably a year of rebuilding, I would say.
Well, I think one of the strengths, it's one of the strengths I say to a lot of people about the whole MaidSafe, what you're doing completely, has been, to me, the biggest strength has been you taking your time about it. It's not being rushed. So I was one of them. I was never in the camp of people who got frustrated about, it's going to be live in the summer. I was like, no, I'd rather you spend another year getting this completely right, because it's one of the lessons I've learned in my life, and is that it's better to take your time and do things completely properly than to rush things. I mean, I just speak as an artist. The amount of paintings I've ruined because I've just rushed through at the end, and I've regretted it forever. So I think it's great because even in the last sort of few weeks, I mean, I know there's been a lot on the forum. There's been, you've been frustrations about bugs and stuff, but I'm the same as that. I'd rather you spend your time killing every single bug that you can possibly find. Now, on the bugs one, Nick, and this is one of the things that you've got to bear in mind. I'm speaking as a complete layman. We all understand bugs. We all have them in our computers. We all have them functioning, and we get viruses and cookies and stuff. What at the very core level is actually a bug? Is that just where one set of code will send another code off to a mail, to a site it doesn't want? Is that what in essence a bug is?
I would say almost like a program not behaving as intended or planned. So programs can obviously still work, but elements of them don't work as you intend, through maybe the fault in the programming or within the logic itself. So I would just define it quite simply as a program not acting in the way that the program had intended.
So I'd imagine from a very layman's perspective, the difficulty then is you've got to go through and find them all and repair them all and hope. I mean, that's my message I'm trying to get to, is that one of the understandings I have of Bitcoin is that even at the deep levels of the blockchain, there's always people coding away and trying to find solutions and stuff like this. And that's what I'm trying to say. Is this always going to be an inevitable situation just because you're writing in code, or do you think there'll ever be a point where you'll make it completely bug-free and that's it? It's a solid, basis to walk away from.
I think it can be a solid base, but I don't think there's probably any software on the planet that's bug-free. I've heard the stat a few times that there's, for every 1,000 lines of code, there's 3 bugs. So I don't think there's any bug-free piece of software out there, but I think there are serious bugs and there are less serious ones, and you can still have a really stable piece of software that's got bugs in it. So, but I think with the Safe network, it's never something that will be finished or complete. So it's something that you'll establish, the alpha release or phase 1 or whatever you want to call it, and then you'll just build on it from there. And you get into things like, as you add features to it, that may in itself create issues, and then you need to go back and repair those, or things don't work as intended. So nothing's ever bug free, and I think it's one of those labor of love type things. You need to keep chiseling away at it, and try and be a perfectionist probably, but know that you'll never achieve perfection.
Now, one of the things has inspired me, and it really excites me about what's gone on in this, in the last year particularly, has been the way this is spread across the world. And I have to sort of feel I have to mention this, because I know that particularly yourself and David and all the crew there, you're all kind of heads down and ploughing, and maybe your sort of communications through the forum and stuff. But in the general wider scope of life, Nick, this is really inspiring people and really changing people. And I could tell you about countless musicians I know who are inspired to write songs about what you're doing, and I could tell you about people who are writing novels and just trying to, and it's almost, let alone the light bulb moment that's going on in people's heads. Now, what I'm trying to say, this has really been a very, like I say, just not just on a person-to-person level, but one of the things that's really, kind of grown over the last year, and I would love to sort of hear your plans, and whether you've got any more, is the idea of the pods, because we've had, I've spoken to the MaidSafe Melbourne pod, and they're doing great things, and you've got the San Francisco pod, and obviously the one in Montreal, and I think there's one over in Germany and stuff. And I was talking to someone recently about even maybe starting one in Argentina. So for the people that, because it's something I'm asked a lot, and I always sort of feel I don't understand it. I'm really not in a position to say, but for people who really want to sort of start a pod up, what kind of skills do they need, and what would be the best sort of steps for them to take, to sort of maybe forming a pod somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's nice to hear that we inspire people. It's funny when you hear that, because you see people writing that in the forum, but for us working in Troon, which is a pretty dark and rainy place for the last, much like Greenock is as well, and it's funny to think of you going into work every day and that you feel quite siloed at times in the work that you're doing, that the thought that it's inspiring people kind of feels a bit strange, because you just feel like you're going to work, but it's nice to hear that. I think in terms of starting a pod, I think it would be something you probably have to have probably some friends or some buddies or something that are really into. I think it's probably going to be more programming focused initially, so I think my own hope is, I'm not a developer either, so my own hope is that the pods become more than just about developing software or developing apps or maintaining the core code. It becomes about assisting with the network and the whole ecosystem as a whole, regardless of your skill set. But I think initially it's going to be about probably software, and I think it's probably gathering a diverse group of people that you trust, and just having, I think one of the biggest things is we get approached, not so much recently, but fairly regular, but people wanting to start pods, and I think the big thing that you have to have is you just have to have the get up and go. There's a lot of people that kind of talk about it, and then there's the people that just all of a sudden say, I'm doing it, and I'm having one. So I think that's quite key. But I think it's probably just a good mix of technical skill. Initially, when we thought about the pods, it was probably a lot to do with core development. So the people helping with the core libraries, and picking off Jira tasks, and that kind of bounty program is, as you know, kind of up and running and has been pretty successful. So because of the network, not going out as quickly as we'd intended, what we've probably ended up with is a very decentralized model, which some people will appreciate, where we've actually had just random guys all over the globe committing code, to these Jira is kind of what we thought the pods would do. So so that's been kind of interesting to see that organically change. But I think as we start the rollout, I think they might well become more organised. The one thing I'm not quite sure about is, structures around, like legal structures and pods, and the only way I can think about it in my head is that people will effectively just do these bounties for themselves, and that but the pod will be just a community place where people get together and talk about the work that they're doing. It will almost be like a pooling point for people to come together. But I think individually the people would probably keep their bounties, or however it is the community decides that we want to run this process. So I think to get a pod up and running, I think it's just you have a lot of get up and go. You're either a developer yourself or you know some developers, and it probably helps that you're tied into a fairly active community. That would be my thoughts about it.
No, one of the strengths I particularly, I go with you, Nick. One of the strengths I think particularly I love about the pods is if nothing else, it's getting human beings together, and that's what I love about. Particularly, I noticed this particularly when I spoke to the Melbourne MaidSafe guys down there, and you had all these people from, as you know, like a true, you got all these people from all around the world, and that's how you spread this idea, because we had the problems of language, and you can't help the fact that MaidSafe and all the code, what you've been doing is in English because you happen to be English. But if we can get this spread through word to word. Exactly, yeah. Well, it's Scottish is even. But what my point being, if we can get this spread through word to word, and that's where pods happen, because people come in, they meet, they take it away, they go and tell their community, and before you know it, it's in Malaysia and Thailand, and that's the essence. I think one of the great strengths about pods, and this is one of the things that I was trying to express to you, Nick, that this is going across the world and it's going multi-languages, and I think it's in some ways now. I'm sure I kind of felt this a year ago. It's almost you've given birth to something now it will go on regardless of yourselves. In truth, you could all be hit by a flu or a meteorite, and it's still going to go on. And that's to me what's more. Since last year, has kind of thought, well, wow, it's nobody can take this away from anybody now. It's out live.
Yeah, it's and I think that was always the idea, that there's no kind of single point of failure for it as well. So you can see yourself, the forum's got kind of a life of its own now, and it's and I think it's really good because we feel like a part of that, but certainly no bigger or lesser part than anyone else, and I think that probably speaks volumes. So and I think that's probably been one of the best aspects for us, is the community engagement, warts and all. So it's because sometimes as humans you only want to see the positive stuff, but sometimes actually getting negative reactions in the forum is the most valuable stuff that you learn. So you kind of take some time and read through the negative stuff, because that's where you're really learning about what your customers and what the community want. So yeah, the people part's really, really important.
Yeah, and as I said to you, Nick, one of the things that there's so much about, and that's why I tell everybody to go out and do as much research as possible. For instance, I was just talking to a friend of mine last night, and it's almost impossible as a human being to a human being in a space of an hour trying to explain exactly what you do, because it's like trying to explain the universe. It will literally it will melt your mind. So I always say to people, go out and do as much research as they can, and discover more and learn as much as they possibly can. But one of the things, and as you know, we were talking, through emails and stuff, and I think one of the things the reason why I really wanted to talk about tonight was I think it's something that it's kind of I don't really sort of see spoken about a lot. It was the whole MaidSafe Foundation, in the sense of the charity and the foundation and all the great things it's doing. And I read a lot of the forums, and like you say, a lot of the forums is people going back to and forth about ideas and all this kind of stuff, but you don't really hear a lot about it. And I remember speaking to a couple of people in the summer, and they were asking me questions about Fab Labs and all that kind of stuff. So I thought there was no better person that I could really get on and kind of try to really highlight a side of MaidSafe that's not really spoken about, and I think deserves to be, because I think it's a really positive element, especially with a younger generation of people coming below us who are growing up in a completely different world to what we grew up in.
Yeah, so the Fab Lab was created when, so David, being David, I mean, generous to a fault. So when he created the foundation out of his own shares, so he basically gave away all his ownership, and a big wedge of that was creating the MaidSafe Foundation. And it's quite a broad remit. It's there to foster education and innovation. But what it's really doing is it's the first Fab Lab in Scotland. So the Fab Lab is short for a fabrication laboratory, and that came out of MIT in the States. And there's quite a number of these. I think there's over 500 now worldwide. And Justine McLeavy in the Troon office kind of has been the most focused on the foundation. So with the idea being that as MaidSafe, the corporate company, the profit-making entity that we all work for, makes profits and dividends are paid, as MaidSafe Foundation is the largest shareholder of MaidSafe, those dividends will flow into that foundation. And that foundation will effectively, as I said, foster education and innovation. So what that means is it could mean if you're a group of school children and you want to, rather than just do finger painting or some of the stuff that seem to do these days, they could maybe come in, or it's a mobile Fab Lab, so we could go out to them. And Justine has been doing that recently, and they get to make, we have a laser cutter, which obviously we'd have to watch the kids using, and various tools that they've got. We're trying to raise funds to buy a 3D printer, and to allow kids to actually make things. So kids are very imaginative, and I think there's Ken Robinson who was kind of very instrumental highlighting that our education systems almost train the imagination out of our children. It's almost like a production line. So before we do that, we should let these kids kind of use their imagination to actually make things. So that's one aspect of what it could do, but you could also be a young entrepreneur who has an idea for, I don't know, something like a new way of packaging boxes or something like that, and you want to go somewhere and make a prototype. Well, you could go into the Fab Lab at the MaidSafe Foundation free of charge, and just go and make that thing and try it and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, try something else. So there's lots of different ways that could help you, and that was born out of the fact that I think just a kind of frustration at the way that kind of government bodies maybe within the UK try and fund businesses. It doesn't, I think it doesn't always maybe do it in the best way. So I think David's idea is to try and just let people go, try it out. If it doesn't work, failure is a healthy thing. Try something else. So that's really what the foundation's about. It's about letting people try things and letting kids learn and things like that, and just trying to do it in a way that's totally sustainable. And if MaidSafe takes off the way we all think and hope it will, it should be a very well-funded organisation that can help a lot of people.
Well, that's what particularly inspires me about the whole Fab Labs and the whole foundation principle, and completely, because as you know, I mean, we can be a bit parochial, and we're both here in Scotland and the West Coast. As you know, there's a lot of, I mean, Nick, every time I go down to Glasgow, and I drive past all those old docks, and they're still there. The mechanics are there, and you think all it's just been left. It's this whole, and you think there's so much untapped potential, and if we could just, like you say, and have ways and means of just, because you think things like 3D printing and stuff, and that, I just think, man, this could just transform a lot of communities, especially when I'm sure Scotland's not unique in the fact it's got a lot of industrial communities that have been, just left because of the changing world. And these are ways and means of, I don't know, in some ways going back to, which I think is essential for us as a species in the next sort of period of where we go forward to in the next few years, is we've got to learn to produce and to create, whatever it is, whether you're producing skills or not, but it's the element of producing that we've got to go back to. And that's what I'm trying to say. I know there's so much untapped skills of people who are producing, who would produce but haven't got the connections, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I love about the Fab Labs thing. I thought I could see this all around the coast of Scotland, all the little Fab Labs and kids all going there, and not only kids, just adults, and going, well, I've got this idea, and be able to 3D print it out and try it out. So I think it's a very inspiring thing, and I think it's something, like I say, it's something I think needs to be spoken about more. And we've said it in '99. We're going on the principle that hopefully we're going to have a pool fund in the sense of, and we would love to do the same. Pump our resources into this, because I think it's essential that as much as we know about all this, we need to. It's going to be, it's really, we're just handing something over to a future generation, and it's important that we make sure that future generation this doesn't become like a blip in time and we end up just being like a bunch of Teslas, and in 20 years time everyone's walking around with DC lights and AC lights.
Yeah, no, I think technology is making this all possible, and I think there's quite a number of these kind of, like, I'll group it in and call them maker type labs. And there's a Mac lab in Glasgow as well. I think some of them are run commercially and some of them are kind of done more for the common good. So I think technology is making this all possible, and some of the figures I've seen, like I say, the Fab Labs are over 500 worldwide. So it's something that is really growing, and I think as we start to see some actual products come out of them, I think people will, I think it needs the infrastructure behind it. So whether it would be something like, I don't know, whether it's a kind of modern day VC fund will end up just funding like these types of labs, and basically will cherry pick off the good ideas or something like that. But so I think that process is happening, and I think probably it just needs some more infrastructure behind it, like funding, to actually people grow businesses out of it if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, and this sort of ties in, Nick. I mean, as much as there's, I think, like you mentioned earlier on about how the forum works like this. I mean, there's so many things that are inspiring about what's going on at the moment, and then equally, I think we've got to be aware there's also forces that are on the other side. And one of the things that, as much as that's what I'm saying, get excited about what's going on. I mean, especially here in the UK, and I know it's the same in America, and it happens all around the world, but we've got this whole surveillance data and legalization coming through on the other side of the pipeline. Now, as I understand it, and obviously, the whole of, the safe network is decentralized, so there's nothing they can actually do with a safe network. Now, they may come and target you as MaidSafe. Now, obviously, that's something you must have discussed about, and, you must have sort of sat and thought, okay, once they actually pass this through and they do require us to give backdoors, I mean, how is the thought process of that, when you've had these discussions? I mean, obviously, you may not want to be talking about that in a public forum, but, I mean, what's the sort of, how do you sort of generally feel about, that kind of pushback, and how we can confront that?
Yeah, we do talk about lots of different things, and I think it's almost one of those things, if you thought too much about it, you probably wouldn't get out of your bed in the morning, because it's, we've always been told we'll be shut down for this or for that thing, or it's abuse of people's digital rights, or all these various things. So yeah, I think we would just need to adapt. As you say, they would need to come after MaidSafe, the company. The whole point about it being decentralized is so that the technology is out there regardless. And I'm not sure with this new investigatory powers bill, the Snoopers Charter that's been kind of coined, whether, I think it needs to be down to interpretation, and I don't think we'll know for a few years how that's interpreted. So there's certainly some clauses in there that makes it look like they may well force companies to not offer end-to-end encryption or actually weaken encryption, but for me right now that's still very much a debate. No one in their right mind would want to weaken encryption. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff this last week. I mean, pretty much just everyone and their granny saying, "Look, this doesn't make any sense." And I've got to think that the powers that be see that as well. And surveillance, generally, mass surveillance is very ineffective, as we all know. So I think it all comes down to how that law will be interpreted and how it will go through. I think the big thing is, hopefully they'll debate this law properly, and maybe they're using the Paris attacks, the legislation through. If you remember the previous act, which was the Deregulatory Powers, the DRIP Act, was passed in 3 days, and then the European Court repealed it. So I think what they need to do is negotiate this properly, and just have an informed debate about it. But to go back to your question about what do these discussions look like? I mean, we just keep going, and I think they're looking to have this voted on, I think in something like May or something of next year. But we'll just need to see how the debate goes and how things look. But even after it's passed, there's still no guarantee as to how a court would interpret the laws that's written down. You'd almost need a few cases to go through first. But the reality is, regardless of law or not, we and companies like Apple, I was watching another thing about Tim Cook today, we literally cannot provide the information. And there's a company that's existed quite successfully in I think Canada called Silent Circle, and they have the black phone, and it was actually Phil Zimmermann, the guy who invented PGP encryption. And so for a long time they say decrypt client data and pass it to the government, and coincidentally the American government are one of the customers. So the law is one thing, but technically we just could not give it to them, and we would just deal with it if we need to deal with that. But at the moment we're based in the UK. I know a number of companies I've seen in the press have moved out with the UK for that reason. I think is it Eris Industries were quite vocal. Preston Byrne is the guy I think that heads that group up, and I think is it Arrow Balkan is another guy. He had that indie idea. He was also talking about leaving the UK, but so whether we need to look at that as well, that could be something we look at. But for right now, we're where we are, and we'll just need to see how the debate goes and how the legislation develops. But it seems pretty insane, like what they're doing, because nobody seems to think it's a good idea. Literally no one apart from the government. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, without going into it, we just don't want to go down that rabbit hole, Nick, about governments and what they do and how they pass laws, because that's not a rabbit hole I want to go down. But the point I've always, and I personally think, that the big game changer will be when companies understand about what's going on with the Safe network. Because at the moment we're all, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I make a joke about it all the time. We're a bunch of ragtag people just on the edges, you know what I mean? At the moment, it's because of the nature of it all, But I know, personally, people who work in companies. I'm not going to say who they are, but all the companies they work for. But they just tell me complete nightmare stories about their security internally, and it's just a nightmare. And they're all looking for this secure secure network. And I think once it's up, running, and live, and a functional network, I think the first company, like anything, will be like the herd. The first cow that runs will be the brave one, and then the whole herd will jump on. Because what company won't want it? And that's, to me, that's will be the game changer. Because once you've got companies on it, and they're going to, then the government, like any state, will have to be like, well, we can only follow the lead of companies. I don't really care about people much, but if IBM and some of the big UK companies all decide, well, actually no, we want encryption and it's necessary, and this is what it's a positive benefit, which it is, then I think that's to me, that's why I don't think there's a lot to worry about, because I think most companies, I don't know how much traction you have as a group outside of our companies, but I just think that the companies are going to flood into this, and I think that's going to be the moment when it's all going to change completely.
Yeah, I think so, and it's I think that TalkTalk and all these other things have proven is that encryption, although it exists and it's really, really hard to implement, it takes a lot of management, a lot of skilled people, and it's very expensive. You need to have all the processes in place to make sure it's done properly. So it's to have data that encrypts itself, and to have a network that is kind of self-managing and self-policing is very valuable, and is definitely a huge selling point for the network. And of course it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to be it's going to take some time, and there'll be, like any business, you'll have the innovators, that, as you say, the brave cow that kind of runs first. You'll have the laggards at the end, which may well be people like the government or large companies who need to be convinced beyond absolute doubt that the network can deliver what we say it can deliver. So it's definitely a huge selling point for the network as a whole, and good for the whole community around it as well, because as we see money and businesses come in, the people on the outskirts and the people in the centre and the community will all benefit from it, because they'll have a head start in terms of their knowledge and how things work. So it'll be good for us all.
Well, that's exactly the reason why, Nick. I've always said this. I think it is a complete epoch, game-changing moment when this actually is in run, because there is no one really, unless you've got intentions to control more, which those those kind of people, we know what they do on this planet. But everybody else, there is nothing other than positives for it. Whether you're in the medical industry and you record all your records on it, whether you're in the newspaper industry and you're a journalist and think, I want to get up and whistleblow. There are positives for everybody, and there are only a few negatives. And I think in some ways it's been one of the great things about the evolution of where we've been is we've had time to almost have these discussions, like you said, on the forums, and have all these debates. So by the time we ever get any blowback from the outside world, we're like, well, we know the answers to this. And I think one of the things that what really inspires me is that people are taking this and going, well, we know what they're going to. It's almost like a paper tiger attitude. We know they're going to come at us, but they're just paper tigers, and we can really, if we can show the positive and what we're actually doing it, then they can say what they like. They can say, because ultimately we have the ability to shape it all, and that's what I think is going to happen really quickly. And because that's what I'm saying. There is nothing negative in the essence about the Safe network, only if you've got negative intentions.
Yeah, I think so, and I think I mean, at the end of the day, you get into all the advantages and disadvantages, but at the end of the day, we're simply building. It's like evolution. It's just simply a better way of passing data around. When all's said and done, that's effectively what we're doing. And advancement's only ever a good thing. And some people will sometimes get left behind, people that have invested interest in the old ways. But it's no reason not to advance. So yeah, I think it's really, really exciting what's happening. And I mean, we're just all really keen. I mean, the pressure we put on ourselves to deliver for the community is absolutely huge. And people talk, we're very well aware how patient people have been, like the community and the people in the forum and stuff, and you can hear the disappointment in their voice sometimes when you maybe hit an issue or something like that. But I mean, they've been amazing, and but the pressure we put on ourselves is far greater than they would ever put on us, because we're just so keen to pay everyone back, really, as we see it, and get this thing out there. So yeah, but it's fun as well. It's hard work, but it's fun.
Well, I don't think anybody would with an ounce of knowledge would ever accuse anybody at the MaidSafe Troon cruise for being anything but hard workers. I mean, I'm always the other way around. I try to sort of tell people I know, like people like David and stuff, like, man, take some sleep, because I think it's important, because this is the point. I think I'm more worried about you lot all burning yourselves out because you feel that under pressure. Whereas, as I said before, I mean, all in time, Nick. All in time. It's the old Scott. It just builds slowly. Don't. The pressure shouldn't be there.
It's like a pint of Guinness settling.
Exactly. It's like a pint of Guinness settling. Now, I mean, to sort of go a bit left field on this, Nick. I mean, one of the things I have to sort of ask is, I've been down to your Troon, where you're doing it at the moment. And well, this is a bit of a left field question, but who's the best pool player? Who's the pool king of Troon?
We've actually got rid of the table now, because it just used to. I know, it used to kind of piss everyone off, because like it'd be a guy in the corner trying to solve a really hard problem, and then you'd have two guys like clunking balls about the table, and so it's. But we had a guy there for a while called Andy, who was kind of the guy in the Q&A department for a while, and he was very, very good. But I think it depends who you ask. I think everyone would say it's them. So I'm going to say it's me.
Okay.
But it probably isn't.
That's, well, you can all say that, Nick, because what I mean, like you say. But I mean, one of the things that like when over the last year, and with everything else, what are you? I mean, obviously, other than being aware, obviously, right, and the forum and stuff, are you aware of what? Generally what's being built outside, or don't you get time? And if you do, what is there anything particularly that out there that really excites you, and apps or just generally? I mean, are you just generally as a crew, are you aware of what's being built outside, or?
Do you mean for the Safe network, like
Yeah,
potential up and
generally,
coming apps?
no, I mean just the apps and the general, add-ons. I mean, just generally, what excites you? I mean, what I'm trying to get to is that you've been in it, you're there in a year. You probably know more than anybody else. But you're day to day at the coalface as much. So, what excites you most about thinking, oh, okay, wow, this one area of the whole network really excites me, or this one, what particularly is really right now. Here we are in November 2015, and you're looking forward, thinking, oh, that's one area I'm getting really excited about.
For me, it's kind of the network as a whole, because that's very much where we are focused. I mean, we're basically building the network. So there's not necessarily one. I mean, there's some that are really, really interesting. I mean, I think that things like global voting, which is probably, it's not going to be the first app that's out there for sure. There's a lot that goes into that, but I think things like that, things that will really, really make a difference, I think those are the things that are probably the most interesting. Or you talked a wee bit earlier on, Tim, about health records.
Mm.
So things like allowing people to manage their own health records would be really interesting. Things like storage apps and stuff would be really cool and everyday, and to know that your messages are fully end-to-end encrypted, and the service is effectively you're paying with something that your computer's earning. I think those are nice, but they're not like really, really world changing. So I think the ones that I think really will make a difference to people are the managing your own records, and I think things like voting, where you think that the amount of voting scandals that we hear about in other countries, and you think just something as powerful as that would really make change that totally and make it really affordable. These elections cost a fortune to run amongst countries that just can't afford it. So I think things like that will be interesting, and I suppose voting as well, not even just within countries, but also within companies or within communities. I think that'll be really interesting. So those are the types of things that I think are interesting. But I think for me, it's still like the network as a whole. I think because we're looking at it from a business side, I get excited about all the kind of partnership relationships you build up, and trying to grow the business, and I think trying to grow the platform is something that I find quite exciting, which is probably makes me a bit weird. But because I'm so focused on that, that's something that I think I'll get a lot of pleasure from when it happens.
Well, I mean, I can I can speak from personal speaking to about the medical records, Nick. I mean, so I don't want to say the guy. Well, he's been on the podcast, Travis. I mean, he's working on a whole medical side of it. It's going to that will transform everything. I mean, the ability, like you say, medical records and things like that. But I think sometimes one of the things that sometimes excite me as much, I think this is one of the things that to me, it really is a light bulb moment that everybody gets. Is just going to have the ability just to create content, whatever it could be, anything. I mean, that's the point, and be rewarded for that content just directly. That to me, like I'm saying, there's some really big, like you say, overview, mind-blowing projects like the medical ones. But it's going to be those small little guys, and that's what inspires me. Go on. Sorry, I was just saying. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine, the other day, and he was saying to me like it's going to be the guy in the middle of Gambia who thinks of these little how to connect to this is the solution for this, and it will be all those things that we haven't even thought about that are going to change the world.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Actually, pay the producer the kind of the reward for content is. I mean, that is massive. That really is interesting. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I think things like that will be really good. And I think even if people are putting up good content, and whatever type of content that is, whether it's a blog or it's music or it's a painting or an image of some sort, then I think people being able to actually get monetarily rewarded for that, I think is huge. Because I don't mean it seem like we're always kind of brow bashing big companies, but at the moment, like all of that, the value of that content is held by those companies who just simply aggregate that content, and so to actually have that value going to the person producing it there's a kind of fairness in it as well. It's just not right just now, and I think if you can be a part of a platform that addresses that, then that's pretty huge, and again something to that we could all be proud of. I think like Jaron Lanier's book, Who Owns the Future, talks a lot about that, and I definitely recommend it if you haven't read it. But he talks a lot about having these economies that are much more spread out, and the value is going to the person that actually produced it, which is right and fair, I think. So yeah, pay the producer's huge as well.
I mean, the other thing, Nick, as well, and I mean, I'm only just becoming kind of aware of myself, just by doing some research myself, but it was basically about how much data retention there is, and the questions that are, are evolving around what to do. I mean, this is the other thing. I mean, there's so many elements of the safe network. You think there's a solution for that, because I've heard. I've heard people calling about data retention, and then they give you the figures. It's like mind blowing, and then, even some of the radical solutions I found, which the one I found most, I thought, okay, that's a great solution, but it's nothing compared to the safe network. I mean, I was reading one today about coding code onto DNA and then storing some of that code up in freezing, which I thought, actually, on a side tangent, I thought that'd be a great idea to maybe code the whole of the safe network, put it onto DNA and freeze it in Iceland. So if we do get hit by a meteorite, maybe future generations, there's actually a record of it. But what I'm trying to say is it's these other aspects of the safe network that it's amazing, because some people will focus on the security, some people will focus on the content providers, but I think there's elements like the data, like you were saying with companies. It's the massive amount of data, and again, I mean, I'm sure just in an overview quickly, you could get, maybe explain how and why that data retention, the amount of data doesn't really. It's kind of like I don't know, like a steamroller rolling over a pea, really, for the safe network. The data retention isn't really a problem. In fact, it strengthens the network, as I understand it. No.
Yeah, I mean, so you're meaning the kind of the ability for the network to retain data, indefinitely, and the deduplication aspect of it, is that?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense of, like I was saying, in the research I was doing, I mean, the companies were saying just the amount of, obviously, which is what's great, because that data is gathering all the information for the computers of everything, and it's making our lives a bit smart, but they don't know where to do it, and they're actually just storage wheel. And I thought, well, that's, again, as I understand it, the safe network can store all that, and it's just like I say, it's like a pea to a steamroller. It's like we swallow that up.
Yeah, and it's down to, I think, the amount of the resource that's out there as well. I mean, I've seen one guy took an estimate, and the estimate was that there was something like 250,000 petabytes of free storage space on all our computers at home, and a petabyte's a million gigabyte. So that's a whole lot, and that's like 1 billion connected computers, each with about 50 gigabyte or something like that free. So when you consider that, it dwarfs any, all the data centers, I would imagine, put together. And I think as we see technology improving and hard drives increasing in size, that will only grow and grow. And then I think when you factor into that things like deduplication, where you would, let's say, if you look at A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles, and however many copies of that exist in the world, that the network would only have to store a very small number of those, and could basically do away with the rest. When you factor all those things in, you then have a network that's very efficiently able to store massive amounts of data that can be used in all types of ways. So we talk about things like computation and things like that. Those features of the network, which will come kind of much later on. When you have all that information and you can start to analyze these really big data sets, it will be really, really interesting to see what comes out of it. And it's a good point to set everyone's kind of expectations about, because sometimes I get the notion in whenever it goes live that basically everything will exist. And what will definitely happen is a very iterative rollout. So we'll start with the basic network, which we're hopefully getting very close to, and then we'll just start to add things on top of that. So I think the process will be, it'll be maybe more deliberate, and it may not be always at the pace that people want it to be at, with all these features that come along. But as you were saying, Tim, like the amount of things that the network can do and the amount of strings in its bow are like huge. There's so many things to pick at, and that people get excited about, whether it's the self-encrypting data, whether it's pay the producer, or it's these other things.
So it's a big project, and it'll be rolled out. And hopefully, I think what we'll see is I'm hoping that the speed of the rollout will increase as we start able to grow the team. And I think what we're also already seeing are, with the community contributions we're getting with these code bounties, with about 10% of the last sprint's work done by people external to the company. I think if we can see that continue to grow, then we'll start to roll out these features nice and quickly. So a slight tangent there, but yeah, I think the ability of the network to retain massive amounts of data is a huge feature, and the way that we do it today in a centralized fashion is just not efficient, and bad for the environment as well. So I think this new decentralized method is the way to go. Whether it's us or somebody else, that's the way it will happen.
I would like to linger on that point, right, on that very point, Nick, because one of the things that and again, I think you're the perfect person that we can I can ask this question of. There's a whole element of the Safe network, which is, like I say, about this the power of the distributing computing, which is again something that's going to progress in future. Now, I've the moment I kind of did my own research into MaidSafe a while back, and I instantly, because I've always been a SETI fan, thought, wow, I can see someone like SETI just jumping on board and using that. Now, is there any way? That's my what I'm trying to linger. My point I'm trying to kind of dig into here is, would there be a way of someone like SETI or those big people to know when to sort of utilize it into the network? So from a layman's point of view, I'm sort of thinking, okay, like you said, we just given birth to this nice little baby of a safe network, and you just don't want someone like some big beast of SETI just jumping on and squashing it and overpowering it all. But would there be any way of knowing at what point? I mean, graphically or visually, or is that just going to be a case of it's just going to have to be tested bit by bit? I mean, because obviously you're going to get people like SETI and all those people thinking, well, I'll have a piece of this distributing computing speed. So I'm just how does this how will that work, or is this just one of these live questions?
Like you mean like I think that I think we need to be mindful of how we roll it out to people as well, and letting people know when it's available. But I think if people are, like SETI as well, you need to provide your resource to that. And so I think if people are doing that, then as long as they're providing more resource than they're using, I think that'll be fine. I think if you're talking about is it maybe a scaling thing you're wondering about? Like if it scales too fast and we haven't tested at that size, like what happens? Yeah, I think we need to as we roll out the network, we'll definitely be running simulations. And I know simulations are not the same as the real world, but running simulations on vast amounts of nodes. I think we'd be kidding ourselves on to think we just launch it and never have to touch it again and it'll run perfectly. That's obviously not going to be the case. So I think into monitoring the network as it scales. In terms of it being graphically depicted, it's simply, we won't even know, like, as you know, how many users. We'll be able to make educated guesses about the number of users on the network. So I don't think it'll be something that would be depicted graphically, because then we'd need to know like where the users are or how many there are. So I think it's just going to be a lot of testing and a lot of monitoring, and probably quite a lot of boring things like that to make sure it performs as we hope. But for sure, we're going to have to work hard, and when problems arise, jump on them and fix them as fast as we can.
Yeah, because one of the other sort of areas of the whole going forward on, and I don't know, again, is this something you discussed or contemplate, or maybe I'm just being completely from my layman perspective and it's not something to worry about, but would there be a possibility of maybe, because the inevitable rise of artificial intelligence and AI, would there be a possibility of maybe an artificial intelligence forking the safe network and making completely an artificial safe network by its own and having its own rules? I don't know. Is that something that's possible? Whether you contemplated that, or
it's not something that's come up, thankfully, and I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, I suppose anything's possible, and yeah, I don't know about the AI stuff. I just don't know enough about it to know to know about all that stuff. So I'm not really sure how to answer that. But you've definitely got to applaud your active imagination. You can tell you're a big fan of Terminator, I suspect.
No, I mean the conversation has arisen from I've had a number of guests on this podcast, and we've always, a lot of these arguments always come back to AI, and that basically that it's kind of like a white elephant in the corner that no one's really sort of talking about. And that was the only reason I sort of mentioned it, because my fear has always been with AI, and it's the Nick Bostrom argument when he's discussed this, has said, great, we get to the point where AI is that intelligent, and we as humanity realize that it's got all the supercomputing. So we ask it this very simple question. We say, right, what's the most banal question we want it to solve? And we say, okay, well, one of the most banal questions to us all is spam. So we feed it in, the AI comes back to us and says, we ask it, best solution to get rid of spam, and the answer it comes back with is kill all humans. And it's a jokey kind of question, but when you sort of realise that there's some quite sort of serious people actually contemplating the rise of AI and the sort of element of that, that was something I just was wondering, maybe like I say, maybe it's just my my active imagination and my.
I think that's one of those questions that you probably need to properly discuss over like a bottle of whiskey or something like that. That's probably when it makes the most sense. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all that develops, and I suppose if someone like Elon Musk is worried about it, then we probably should all pay attention to it. So we'll see what happens.
Exactly. No, to begin, Nick, and I think even regardless of that, and that's again, it's just one of the reasons why I say, I think it's important to fly the flag, because I think one of the things that we have got, regardless of what the artificial intelligence and all that, but I think just generally, I think the most inspiring element of what you're doing, what you've launched, is anybody, we can shape it, and that's the ability that human beings can shape this. So even if there is a dystopia AI out there, we've got the edge right now because we can shape, and I think that's regardless of whether you want to go down tangents about AI rising or anything. I think that's the most inspiring thing. That's why I think I try to go out and fly the flag, and as I said, that's the light bulb moment that's going off in people's heads all over the moment. Like, wow, we can shape this.
Yeah, it is, and some of the interesting parts with the network as well as the things that we do, like to make things more secure. A lot of times things are insecure because of people. I think it's something like 35% of data thefts are caused by human error or maliciousness. And so a lot of what the network does, if you think about it, is it removes people from the management of our data, which is a kind of another interesting angle to what you're saying. So if you have data that's encrypting itself, and you have a network that's self-managing, it doesn't require administrators. So there's lots of different angles to it. So yeah.
Well, like I said, Nick, and before we sort of wrap this podcast up and before we wrap this conversation up, I think one of the things that, and like I said, I've opened this up to put it out. I put this quick to people I know on Twitter and social media in general. And like I said, there was a lot of questions that came back to me, and I think beyond all the questions that came back to me and all that, and I think the one thing that was overwhelming is that everybody wanted to tell you that just a big thank you to yourself, to the crew, to all of you, and like I say, I know there's some people on the forum and they get to say what they do. But there's a huge army of people out there that, that's not maybe the wrong word, but there's a huge massive people out there that maybe don't go on the forum, and you are all of this is just changing their lives right now, even before we've gone live. And this is the thing that inspires me the most. I think, wow, this is changing people before it's all gone live. And I think it's essential that you guys, particularly in True, know this, because like you said, especially these dark months when it's raining and it's cold and the sun goes down at 3:30 and it doesn't get up till about 9:30, and it's
it gets up at 12.
Exactly. So when you're in that situation and you're ploughing away, and I know particularly in the last sort of few weeks it's been, I feel sorry for poor old Ross. He has to write those updates, and it's kind of like, he's got to write that whole thing, and like, actually this week we've just been doing bugs, and I'm really sorry. And it's like, no, So, but what I'm trying to say is, in the midst of all the world you are at, you know, maybe you don't get to know about how much it's like I said to you earlier on, and I think it's crucial that, because it's something that I've been told a lot to everybody new that was going to come on tonight, to let you know that, you know, just a huge thank you, because you are doing things that are, I don't mean this in a light sense at all. They are life changers. It's completely transforming people's lives, and you're personally never going to get to meet them. People at Troon are never going to get to meet them all. But you know, and that's why I have to sort of pass this across, because I think it's important that you guys know up there that what you're doing is, it's not only is it inspiring a lot of people and it's changing a lot of lives, but you know, we're all behind you 100%, and you know what I mean. So in that relation, Nick, I mean, again, I know, as I said before in the whole of this beginning of this conversation, like I say to most people, I try to point people in the direction of getting involved and finding out as much and everything else beyond all the, you know, how they can get involved in the site. Is there anything just generally that we as people can right now out there be doing for someone, for you guys, you know, anything we can just be doing? I mean, like I say, other than trying to get involved in the website and all that, but just what do you want from the outside community that, you know, that we can do?
Yeah, do you know what? I think the people outside of, for the, you know, have given enough, and I think that I think the onus is on us to deliver on what we said we would, and it's really nice to hear that we've changed lives before we've launched, but I don't think we're going to stop until we've actually changed lives because we've launched, and actually deliver real change. So we won't stop until that. So I don't even think there's anything you could ask. You know, you couldn't ask any more of the community. They're engaging in the forum. You know, I think all the negative feedback and the positive feedback is all really good, and I think just as long as that continues, you know, that's all that we can ask, and you just couldn't really ask any more of the people on there. So I think the onus is on us now to deliver something, and you know, we're not going to stop until we do that. So, and pay everyone back for all their, because there's no more valuable thing than time. I mean, I see some of the guys in the forum writing. I can't even remember who it was, but he was saying that there was some design discussion and our stroke argument on the forum, and this guy was quickly trying to design something, and he said his pregnant wife was shouting at him when he was coming to bed, and I thought that was really quite a nice thing to hear, because it shows you the sacrifice and that people enjoy being there, and that you're forming a part of somebody's life. So those stories are great to hear, but I don't think that there's anything we could ask of the guys in the forum, and like I say, the onus is just on us to deliver it now, and we're very, very conscious of that, so we're doing everything we can to do that.
Well, that's perfect, Nick. Well, and again, bearing in mind all the things that we've been lingering about and talking about tonight, I have to thank you for the time you putting the time in, especially on a Thursday evening, and you know, giving me the time and that. And again, you know, goes without saying, you know, send my regards to everybody down at Troon, and it's quite a deliberate policy. I deliberately try not to sort of get, you know, as much as it really frustrates me, Nick, I could get, you know, I feel like sometimes I could just get in a train, just come down, but no, I think it's important that, you know, you're left alone to do what you're doing. But again, and I just, you know, send my regards to all the you know, the Troon, you know, all your crew down in Troon, and you know, just keep doing what you're doing, because like I say, you are bit by bit, step by step, you're changing the world, and it's necessary, and in the times that we live in, that this is done. So I just want to say to you, Nick, you know, again, you know, maybe we'll get you back on the podcast when we're officially live, which I'm not allowed to. I mean, Paige told me off the other day for using even the word launch, so I'm not even going to go anywhere near that. So, but we'll get you back on, you know, in a few months' time and stuff like that. But like I said, send my regards to all the crew down there, and like I say, thanks for being on tonight. And well, is there, you know, if you could just, you know, maybe in a sentence or two, what would be your takeaway message for people out there who are listening?
Man, that's hard to boil it down to a sentence or two. I should be good at this type of stuff, but
If
I
not,
think
we
I
can
lost.
just go. If not, the takeaway sentence can be that Nick Lambert is the king of Paul in Troon.
That's it. Yeah, that wouldn't be the one I would take away. No, I think it's just it just shows you. I suppose it's kind of I suppose corny, but it's definitely when you see it's people that build these communities, and it's really interesting that that's forming around technology, and it's this technology that's bringing us all together. And so I think the community thing is probably the most important thing that I've taken away from what we're doing. So as much as technology is great, what technology is all about is bringing people together. So that might be the one slightly corny takeaway. So I suppose all your viewers will be reaching for sick bags or something like that after that. But
Well,
you put me on the spot, and that's the best I could come up with.
no, that's okay, Nick. So I mean, this should be more of an easier one for where can people, if they want to get involved, where's the best way they can get involved?
I think it's just a forum. So forum.network.io is definitely still the place to go. There's a new MaidSafe.net site launching
Yes.
pretty soon. But I mean, the forum's still got a helpful bunch of people for the most part, and so they can always go in the right direction as well. So that's probably your first port of call.
Well, perfect. Well, like I say, Nick, you just you keep ploughing away and doing all this hard work, because for every step you're taking, it's a step in the right direction. So, well, I just want to say to like again, thanks for coming on tonight, Nick. And well, for me in the well, we're both in Scotland. I'm used to sort of rounding this up by saying me in Scotland, someone else in California or something. But we're both in Scotland, so from us in Scotland, it's a good night, and life is people.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Cheers, Tim. Thanks for your day.
No problem, Nick.